Hello, good morning. So, we are still here again speaking and discussing about the second lecture of organic production. I wanted to remind you that the title of the lecture is General Principles of Organic Agriculture and Agroecology. Till now, we have discussed about ecology and agroecology. And we will still continue to speak about it. We were speaking till now, in the first part of this lecture, about ecosystems. Now I want to speak about agroecosystems. Agroecosystems are modified ecosystems used for agricultural aims. What are they? They are communities of plants and animals interacting with their physical and chemical environments that have been modified by us, by people, to produce food, fuel, and other products for human consumption and processing. Agroecosystems are the ecosystems in which humans have exerted a deliberate selectivity. So this means the humans has intervened during selection on the composition of the biota or the living organism. For example, the crops and livestock maintained by the farmer, in this case, replacing in a huge scale the natural flora and fauna of the site. So now we have not anymore totally a self-control of the system, because now the humans enter in play, enter in the joke, and intervene in the systems or intervene in the regulation of the ecosystem that now is agroecosystem, because it is not anymore natural, since the humans project and plan and exercise or practice them. In this moment, now we come to the agroecology again. Just I want to repeat and remind the definition I have in fact given to you in the first part of the lecture. So agroecology is the science of applying ecological concepts and principles to the design and management of sustainable agroecosystems that are both productive and natural resource conserving, and that are also culturally sensitive, socially just, and economically viable. I wanted to explain here one agroecosystem, how it is functioning. Now we have not anymore a natural ecosystem, but we have an ecosystem where the people, have intervened. First, I wanted to show you that with this continued flow, it is assigned energy, the flow of energy, and with this continued arrow is the flow, or it is shown the flow of nutrients. We have cultivated plants, means that is, as I said, an agroecosystem. Plants will produce when the energy of the sun is entering in the system or in the agroecosystem. When the nutrients comes from the soil or from soil solution, carbon dioxide is entering from the atmosphere. It will produce organic matter, and this organic matter will move to the market and to the consumers. They will consume it, and then we will have loss of heat and of the nutrients. It will go composers that then they will transform a part of it and will turn again to the soil, which will be taken again to the crops or from the crops. However, in this we have other losses. We have or losses. We have here, and we have, in order to compensate in this not more natural ecosystem, we have to compensate these losses, and then humans put the so-called inputs, be different fertilizers and other nutrients or pesticides or hormones. Now I am going to present you a table with some characteristics of ecosystems in order to compare between them agroecosystems, so artificial ecosystems that are considered non-sustainable, with natural systems that are considered sustainable. They are considered sustainable, I mean natural ecosystems, because as we explained previously, the ecosystems have self-control, self-evolution, self-regulation, and so on. I want to show you based on which the two systems are compared between them. For example, if we consider production, the production is high in conventional agroecosystems and low in the natural ecosystems. Why? Because the natural ecosystems tends to produce in order to everlast. And agroecosystems, the objective of creation of agroecosystems created by humans is to produce for them, to produce food, to produce fibers, and not is focused to their survive or survival. There is another big difference between them, for example, productivity. In the case of conventional agroecosystems and high in natural ecosystems. Why? Now we consider the mass, the green mass that they produce. Natural ecosystems use better nutrients and solar energy and then produce much more green mass from the photosynthesis process. In fact, considered in general, conventional agroecosystems produce less, and this is scientifically based about energy sources, We have much more diversified energy sources here. Here, except the solar energy that use for plants, we use fossil energy, for example, mechanization, or animal energy when we use animals for transport or for working the land, the soil. Human, through the human labor. And in the case of natural ecosystems, we have only solar energy. Selection, for example. Selection here is not natural in the case of conventional agroecosystems. Dominant plants and animals here are selected by humans are under artificial than natural selection. In fact, in the case of natural ecosystems, it is natural. So who wins? The stronger. About species diversity, the biodiversity here is low because we have monoculture. In the case of natural ecosystems, it's very high. And so on. You have a look in all, try to understand them, compare between two systems. In this case, it is important to memorize these differences between them. Try to find in the literature and real examples to compare these two systems. In the previous slides, we spoke about natural ecosystems and agroecosystems. We understood that natural ecosystems are sustainable. But from the other side, we cannot feed the population of nowadays, but especially in the future, based on only two natural ecosystems. We have to interfere, we have to create agroecosystems. So the question now is how to make these agroecosystems sustainable, or at least to tend to be sustainable. Here we have a comparison between two different agroecosystems that can be created from humans, but one can be non-sustainable and the other tends to be sustainable. In case of non-sustainable agriculture, we have monoculture, or the monoculture is one of the causes that the agriculture is not, or the system is not sustainable. In case of sustainable agriculture, it is suggested to use polyculture. Non-sustainable is based only on mechanization, while the sustainable agriculture except the mechanization like tractors, use animals and labor force. Regarding the tillage, the non-sustainable agriculture is used a very intensive tillage of the soil, while in the sustainable agriculture there is not at all use of tillage, or at least can use minimum tillage. This means to disturb as less as possible the soil. But fertilization or nutrients, in the case of non-sustainable agriculture, minerals are coming from fertilization uh, with off-farm origin. In the case of sustainable agriculture, fertilization is organic, non-chemical, and used in the farm or on the farm. It's almost just as I said previously, to disease and pest. In the non-sustainable agroecosystems, we have external control, and this control is coming from chemicals. In case of sustainable, the contrary, we have this control is ecological. Water, we use a huge quantity of water for irrigation in the non-sustainable agriculture. In case of sustainable agriculture, we practice a lot of measures for conservation of the water, and from these ways of conservation of the water, we are based mainly on the raining water. What about varieties? We have selected varieties, and especially GMOs can be used in sustainable agriculture. What are GMOs? Are genetically modified organisms. In case of sustainable agriculture, it is suggested to use varieties, indigenous varieties. And why this? Especially in the condition of climate change, when there are the difficult conditions of nutrition and for survival of the plants, in fact, it is seen that in this case, the varieties that are adapted for that are perfect, they will not survive in the conditions that are difficult. And in this case, in the first place, and they're more productive and more capable to survive, they are exactly the native varieties. In the previous slides, we said that ecosystems, there is nothing else than two parts: biotic or living organism from one side with these all interactions, and physical environment. There are interactions between organisms and between environmental factors and organisms. So let's speak now about the environmental factors, or the physical part of the ecosystem. The main factors of the environment are light, temperature, water in the soil and in the atmosphere, wind, soil and nutrients, fire, and biotic factors. The environmental resources interact, making the environment very complex and very dynamic. Now let's go more deeply in the comparison between agroecosystem and natural ecosystems. When there is not outside disturbance in the natural ecosystems for a long time, they tend that to complete a transition of matter between biotic and abiotic spheres. In this case, the nature tends to keep the most vital nutrients within the system. That means that we have the closed cycles. But what happens in the agroecosystems, especially in the economic concepts, or based in the economic concepts of nowadays and in our lifestyle? We are characterized, and the ecosystems that we create are characterized by a throughout mentality. Why? Because we use the resources to produce goods, and these goods, after the consumption, are thrown as garbage instead of being recycled. This way of using the land brings us to the loss of nutrients, minerals, and organic matter because of soil erosion and water runoffs, and meantime cause the generation of the other systems like groundwater pollution and landscape degeneration. Why? Because, for example, if we have runoffs of nitrogen to water, then the water in the lake or in the rivers will be polluted with nitrogen. In the agroecosystems, so in the ecosystems created by humans, land degradation, salinization, pesticide pollution of soil, water and food chains, depletion of groundwater, genetic homogeneity, and associated vulnerability are all serious questions regarding sustainability of modern agriculture. I wanted again here to remind you the agroecology definition. Agroecology is the science of applying ecological concepts and principles to the design and management of sustainable agroecosystems that are both productive and natural resource conserving, and that are also culturally sensitive, socially just, and economically viable. Why I mentioned again the definition? Because I wanted to explain here, based on this, which are the agroecological principles. That means which are the principles that we have to use in the base of all our activity when we are cultivating or are creating agroecosystems. In order that we establish or create agroecosystems that are more sustainable, we have to think about recycling of biomass. So, we suggest, or the agroecology suggests, that you have to enhance recycling of biomass, optimizing in this case nutrient availability and balancing nutrient flow. It is suggested to secure favorable soil conditions for plant growth, particularly by managing organic matter and enhancing soil biotic activity. Why? Because there are different practices with what or with which we can protect and add organic matter, and this way we can enhance soil biotic activity or activity of especially microorganisms. Another principle is to minimize losses due to flows of solar radiation, air and water by way of microclimate management, so to create a kind of microclimate, water harvesting and soil management through increased soil cover. So there is an important principle to use soil cover with plants for sure, or other ways like mulching. Another principle is to enhance species and genetic diversification. So biodiversity and diversification is important for the agroecosystem, and this diversification, it is important to be in time and in space. Later in the next lecture that deals with soil fertility, especially I will speak about diversification of agroecosystem in time and space. The other principle is to enhance beneficial biological interaction and synergies. It's important to find the way of synergism. So this means that we have to plant or to plan the species that can in fact benefit from each other. In this way, we can do a better use of nutrients, we can do a better use of energy, we can even protect the soil and the waters from pollution. So it is important that to enhance these synergies among components, and in this way resulting in the promotion of key ecological processes and services. And why it is important? Why it is important, the biodiversity? I wanted to refer here to Professor Altieri and Nichols. The causes of environmental crisis rooted in or is rooted in a prevalent socio-economic system which promotes what? Monoculture and the use of high input technologies and agriculture practices that lead to the natural resource degradation. So the problem is the practices we use. And then this is a boomerang for us. It turns back in the worst way. From a management perspective, the agroecological objective is to provide a balanced environment, sustained yields, biologically mediated soil fertility, and natural pest regulation through the design of, important, diversified agroecosystems. So diversity, biodiversity, and this will help us to have a low input technology. Why biodiversity is important for agroecosystems? Okay, biodiversity is one of the principles of agroecology. In fact, the systems that have high biodiversity lead to an optimal recycling of nutrients and organic matter turnover. They create a closed cycle of energy flow. They can help in water and soil conservation and can balance pest natural enemy populations. For example, let's consider pest natural enemy populations. In case we plan very well the members of an agroecosystem, for example, we can introduce there plants that can serve or can be a house, a home for the natural enemies of the pests, and diseases for sure, and in this case we humans have to intervene less because we help to create a self-control system. This strategy exploits the complementarities and synergism that result from the various combination of crops, trees and animals, in spatial and temporal arrangements. Key practices are those of a preventive nature and which act by reinforcing the immunity of the agroecosystem through a series of mechanisms, which are, in this case, mechanisms or strategies to restore biodiversity in agroecosystems. One, there is crop rotation. What is crop rotation or what are crop rotations? It is a temporal diversity incorporated into cropping systems, providing crop nutrients and breaking the life cycles of several insects, pests, diseases, and weed life cycles. Another strategy that is suggested, in this case restore or create biodiversity, there are polycultures. You remember, I think, the table I gave you previously comparing sustainable and non-sustainable agriculture. Polycultures. Polycultures are complex cropping systems in which two or more crop species are planted within sufficient spatial proximity to result in competition or complementation, and so we can enhance yields. Another strategy is intercropping. But what is intercropping? Intercropping is to grow two or more crops together in mixture that allow interaction between individuals of the different crops or different species. Strip cropping. Strip cropping is when we plant different crops in strips near each other, next to each other, creating what we call it a polyculture of monocultures. But what does it mean? It's not a total mix. For example, we don't mix the seeds together and spread together, or put in the sewing machines and spread together. But we create lines, rows, and we exchange with them. Another strategy to restore and to create biodiversity in agroecosystems is use of hedgerows and buffer zones. What are hedgerows and buffer zones? They are lines of trees or shrubs planted around the perimeter of fields, along pathways, or to mark boundaries. You have seen, and I will show you in the next slides photos that show when we have hedgerows or hedges, natural hedges, not fences. It's uh, For some things they probably can have the same function, for example, to mark boundaries, but hedgerows are living organisms, are plants and trees that are alive. Another way how to restore biodiversity in agroecosystems is agroforestry, for example. An agricultural system where trees are grown together with annual crops or animals, resulting in stronger or enhanced complementary relations between components, increasing multiply use of the agroecosystem is agroforestry. Cover crops. What are the cover crops? The use of pure or mixed stands of legumes or other annual plant species under fruit trees for the purpose of improving soil fertility, enhancing biological control of pests, and modifying the orchard microclimate. Animal integration in agroecosystem is another way how we can use or how we can restore biodiversity. Animal integration in agroecosystems aids in achieving high biomass output and optimal recycling. So, through animals, we can do recycling of nutrients and organic matter. Why biodiversity is important in agroecosystems? When we have high biodiversity, we have more opportunities for coexistence and beneficial interactions between species that can increase agroecosystem sustainability. Greater diversity often allows better resource use efficiency in the agroecosystem. Do you agree? They can use, for example, because they can have different needs for nutrients, and so one use more one kind of nutrient and the other another kind of nutrient. And so in this case, we have a better resource use. The same thing is about solar energy. We can have plants that need much energy, and we have other plants that can be grown in shadow. So in this case, we can use better resources. A diverse crop assemblage can create a diversity of microclimates, so they can profit, they can benefit of each other. This within the cropping system that can be copied by a range of non-crop organisms, for example, including beneficial predators or, as I said previously, natural enemies, parasites, pollinators, sometimes you forget them, soil fauna, and antagonists. They are of great importance for the entire system. About soil biodiversity. Soil biodiversity, it is important. It's important for the agroecosystem, self-control, self-regulation, immunity, as we say. So it is not only above ground biodiversity important, but it is even the soil biodiversity important. Many scientists call soil as the skin of the earth or as a living organism. Soil biodiversity offers important ecological services such as nutrient recycling, detoxification from chemicals, regulation of plant growth and protection from pathogen organisms. Yes, you've heard detoxification. Like when we want to detox, what do we use? We use juices of green vegetables. The same activity is doing soil through its organisms. So the soil do detoxification from chemicals. And then is the question how much we humans put chemicals in the certain time or in a certain period. Because the natural processes have a certain speed of recycling or detoxification. Diversity of the soil reduces economic risk for farmers, especially in marginal areas where environmental conditions are difficult. In case when one crop fails or do not do well, the other crops can compensate. It is like in the lectures of business. Who has studied economy knows this. For example, when they do quality or quality management systems, they learn or they are taught that a company or an enterprise is better to have always more than one supplier and more than one client. Because if they are dependent only in one of them, tomorrow probably they, because of changes on the market, they will fail to have it, and so they will fail really. But if they have more than one, so if one client go, then they will work more with other clients. So probably they will have losses, but they will not lost totally, they will not fail totally. Based on the previous reasoning, I would say, in front of us now, there is not the question of not doing agriculture, but the question of doing it softly, trying to mimic and respect the nature as much as possible.